Welcome to the latest episode of First Word in Sports. Recording this Friday morning. James, wake me up. Have you ever seen such turgid, boring football than the dross that Arteta and his £1 billion spent are producing at the moment? Limp into the semi-finals of the Champions League. How are you on this sunny Friday morning?
Luke, yeah, just woken up from that game on Wednesday night. Thankfully, I made the right decision, like everyone else, barring an Arsenal fan or Sporting fan, to watch the Real Madrid versus Bayern Munich game. Right, actually, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid on Wednesday night, which was much more entertaining. But I'd also watch paint dry than Arsenal Football Club at the moment. It really is. You nicknamed it. Is the Unwatchables are back in force, and yes, they are in the semi-final to back. They've beaten absolutely no one. They've beaten Leverkusen and they scraped past Sporting Lisbon, who are in no great shape. And as we saw last night with Porto, playing Thiago Silva, who's 41, and Jan Bednak, who was a shocking player at Southampton, that Portuguese Super League is bang average. And Sporting were bang average, and Arsenal just scraped through. And the pressure is still on. Even Declan Rice's comments afterwards, we don't care what people say. Now, that might be true, and it probably is true, but you saying that means that you aren't caring about what people are talking about in the press and social media about how Arsenal are playing. They've got to improve because Atletico Madrid won't be fearing them at all in the semi-finals.
And I think where it's quite interesting for Atletico Madrid is, given they don't really have much to play for from a league perspective, is they will rest everyone before those Arsenal games. They will be bang up for those Arsenal games. Arsenal will have had other big Premier League games in the build-up to it. So it does it always tilts the balance a little bit away from the Premier League teams, I find, in the latter stages of this competition. So whether we saw Paris Saint-Germain having the weekend off and those sorts of things. So it's going to be an interesting test for Arsenal. I mean, they couldn't ask for a better draw. It's ludicrous, the draws that they've had this year. But they have to make them count, because if you don't win this year, they're just not going to get a better chance than to win this year. So, um, but I term them the unwatchables, James, because this isn't something that's just popped up in the last week or two. Been banging this drum since, I think, before Christmas. There's something very, very flawed, I think, with the way Arteta's asking this group of players to play. In previous years, when they've had these second place finishes in the league, they've actually played some nice football at times. Obviously, it's been based on a very sound defensive base. But going forward, and I don't know how much of it is just Gyökeres and or not, but it is absolutely abysmal to watch.
Yoker has had one of those games where you go, is he a professional footballer on Wednesday night? I know he's playing against his former club, but they had no idea how to get the best out of Gyökeres at all. They asked him to be a hold-up player. It's not a hold-up centre forward in any stretch of imagination. Just doesn't do anything. It was 58 minutes of garbage performance by him. Havertz come on. Yeah, got a few injuries. Obviously, Saka's out injured. Talked about him. Madueke went off injured again. Was a knee injury. Dowman came on. When you bring on a 16-year-old kid in the quarter-final of Champions League, he does look a talent, which everyone knows about him. But it's worrying times for Arsenal as a performance-wise. They're scraping results, but they have to start playing well. And then, yeah, they just don't have any patterns of play. I watch them and go, what are you trying? How are you trying to attack? How are you actually trying to break down on the side? I don't understand. They get the ball, Zubimendi, well, they try and move it into Zubimendi from the centre backs or David Raya, who spreads the ball very well. And then they go, it's almost like they're told, keep the ball, don't play any sort of attacking passes because we don't want to lose the ball. We don't want to get turned over in transitions. The opposition gets back into some sort of shape or full on shape and go, well, go on then, break us down. And they don't have any ability to break them down because essentially they're not actually that very good Arsenal forwards. But, Gyökeres isn't a proper centre forward. He's not, none of them to worry about. Martinelli just hasn't improved in the last 3 or 4 years under Arteta at all. And Trossard is just what he is. He's just a mid-table Premier League player that probably shouldn't be anywhere near this Arsenal team starting anyway. Yeah, Atletico Madrid won't be worrying at all.
I,
And you know that Simeone is going to be go there and be ultra defensive. It's going to be defensive versus defense, isn't it? Again, and rely on Julian Alvarez to do something special, kind of thing.
I think the patterns of play thing's interesting. Are you saying that passing the ball sideways and then passing it again sideways and then passing it again backwards and then sideways isn't conducive to creating opportunities?
Okay.
I do think one of the problems they have in those central midfield areas is Zubimendi. He came in and looked very good. I think he hasn't been nearly as good in the last 3 or 4 months, in terms of progressing the ball. And I think it's one problem I have with Declan Rice is Declan Rice can do a lot of very good things in those central areas, but he doesn't have this fabulous range of passing that, as a team, you're going to be worried. Oh, Declan Rice is, he's going to thread 6 through balls, that type. He's just not good enough on the ball relative to some of those more talented central midfielders. He has other attributes in terms of getting up and down the pitch, and you know, it's not necessarily just a criticism of him, but from those central midfield areas, they just aren't good enough at progressing the ball forward quickly enough. And the problem you have is then when teams are sat back against them, everything is always so slow, and it's easy to defend. It's quite easy to defend against them. And the other thing you always talk about is it's predictable. You know what Arsenal are going to try and do, and I do think that teams, if you don't concede set pieces to Arsenal, they've struggled all year to break teams down. It's one thing when you look at all the data and numbers, and you look at open, XG from open play and things like that. Is some of that is slightly distorted because they're not bad at running up a score occasionally. But in games in close games, they're just not that brilliant at creating loads of chances, which aren't set pieces.
Yeah. Declan Rice is just, he doesn't look 100% fit at all, by the way. He's struggling with whatever injury he's got. But he's got
Well,
another.
he said he was ill before that game on yesterday, and not yesterday, on Wednesday, and it may well played a part. But just quickly, can we please talk about Arteta in terms of, we talked about this back in October, November, and his inability to rotate the squad. They've got the likes of Norgard sat there on the bench. Rice and Zubimendi just keep playing game after game after game. They look absolutely exhausted, whether be illness or not. I'm not saying in that particular game that you want to be not playing your best players, but one of the challenges as a manager is to sort that workload out throughout the whole season, and it's why you get so frustrated when Arteta kept bringing on the likes of, he's ruined Saka in some respects physically, keeps bringing him on in pointless, Carabao Cup games and FA Cup games. And, he's absolutely exhausted as a young, he's not old, Saka. But, Rice and Zubimendi, they look exhausted. And some of that is on Arteta and his inability to actually use the likes of Norgard properly.
Norgard was obviously the Brentford captain last year, spent £10 million, experienced international player, and they've played him, I think, like, it's ridiculous how little football he's played. Yeah, it's Groundhog Day with Arsenal, isn't it? They've got a huge game on Sunday. And pressure, Arteta booked again, waving, flapping his arms around, all this business. He's way too emotional on the sidelines, way too emotional. The fans see it, the players see it, and I'll keep on going on about it. I don't rate him as a manager. And I can't see them winning the title, and I can't see them winning the Champions League at all. I really can't. I can't see them going through against Atletico Madrid, to be honest with you.
I can see them winning the title, but partly not through default, but I could see City not. Everyone just assumes that City are going to win out almost in terms of, they're going to go on this run of winning 6, 7 games, whatever it may be, because they've done that previously. I think when you look at their fixtures, there's enough tricky fixtures in there where they could drop points. I mean, one of the differences now is all their focus is pretty much. I know they're in the FA Cup, but their focus is on all those league games. So they don't have distractions. So maybe they can, win every game from here. But I think people assume that that's going to be the case, and I just think that it tends to be a lot harder to do that than people realise. So if
Yeah, and
Arsenal do win, it feels like it might be through City slipping up along the way, like they have done quite a few times already this year.
yeah, I was just about to say Arsenal's last two games, I think, are Fulham, not Fulham, are Burnley and Crystal Palace. So Burnley will be down, and Palace will be more interested in the Conference League final, won't they? So those two last games, you expect Arsenal to have a freebie almost. But yeah, anyway, should we move on? Don't have to talk about Arsenal.
So let's talk about the other Champions League games from this week. Let's go back to Tuesday. Always pleasing to see Liverpool sent packing, James. Obviously lost 2-0 again. I thought you played okay for parts of that game. A different day, you may have got the first goal and it'd been a different outcome. I know you weren't overly enthused by it. I don't think PSG played that well. And weirdly, I don't think they played amazingly in that first leg at times. They were wasteful, but I think it's more a reflection on how you guys played. But we talked about the lineup, including Isak, before that game, just the messages between ourselves. And genuinely, we couldn't quite believe that this was the moment that he decided that Isak needed to start.
Shambles, absolute shambles of a starting 11. I'll get to Isak in a minute. You play Hugo Ekitike. He's obviously suffered a very serious ruptured Achilles tendon, hasn't been operated on yet. He's going to be out for the best part of a year, 15 months with that injury. Just look at Cheptegei, did his Achilles in 2023 and has played 13 games since. I know several other injuries, but that's what happens when you have a serious injury like that. Is way worse than an ACL. So hopefully he comes back. Well, you won't see him till this time next year, the earliest. He plays him right wing, which he's never done in his career before. It's almost like on spike. He's not played Mo Salah, by the way. So, and then he played Alexis McAllister, who can't run, can't press out of 10. And he played Szoboszlai as the deepest right midfielder. So he's played three different formations in 3 weeks, in 3 games, in 6 days, essentially. And he plays Isak for 45 minutes. And the worst thing about it is with Isak, he tells the whole world that he's only going to play 45 minutes because he can't, just in case the game goes to extra time. I mean, what is all that about? It's just absolute nonsense from a Liverpool head coach. Just go out and tell you what they're going to happen. He's going to play 45 minutes. And then he's shown no ability to get the best out of Isak anyway. Isak had 5 touches in the whole 45 minutes. He couldn't even run after 35 minutes anyway. It was an absolute disgraceful team selection. PSG obviously got. As soon as Salah came on, all they did was man mark Verts in the first half, right? Until Salah came on, because they knew they had no other creativity Liverpool on the side. Salah came on, and as soon as Salah came on, had a little bit more creativity. Obviously, it's a great challenge by Marquinhos from Virgil van Dijk. Liverpool didn't play well in the first half at all. Needed Paris Saint-Germain, but they were in cruise control. It's 2-0 up. They could score at will, probably. Liverpool played well from 50 minutes to 70 minutes for 20 minutes when they pressed the ball high up the pitch and got into the faces of PSG. And then the penalty given, it wasn't a penalty. Liverpool fans can scream all they like. McAllister goes down like a sack of potatoes. Yeah,
Shock.
he is tough. Yeah, shock. That's because his legs are gone. Shock, his legs are gone. And now, in other leagues, that's going to be given. Like, they're not going to change that. I don't think in the Premier League they'll change that kind of thing. But I don't think it's penalty. Liverpool fans can claim all they want. There should have been 2 penalties in the first leg anyway. Do you want to go on that? If you want to go on that. The win took all the sails out of them. And then obviously Dembele scores a great goal. Gravenberch again, lazy, didn't get out to him. Great finish, and then the tie's over. Thanks so much for coming. The last goals are relevant. But Yeah, it's PSG with a much better team over two legs, and Liverpool are an absolute shambles of a football club on and off the field. Obviously, with rumours with Hughes and Edwards and Slot. And please just don't believe what's been said in the media by Ornstein, James Pearce, who's Paul Joyce, the Times reporter, anyone else like that. They are being told constantly by Tony Barrett and Neil Jones of the Liverpool media, in-house media, what to say, what to write. Yeah, they do have contacts there, but Liverpool media aren't going to turn around to these journalists and say, all this business here, Slot's under pressure. They're not going to. I did read a report on ESPN by Julian Laurens, Gabriel Marcotti, who are basically calling out Slot and saying, what was that all about, the two games against PSG? Because they have no affiliation to Liverpool, so actually get some real journalism. But we know that Slot's not going to be in charge next season at all. It's just not happening. Just don't believe what's written in the papers. It's just nonsense. It's just absolute nonsense, in my view.
It is interesting, sort of slightly further away from it. I mean, you've obviously been talking about the issues with Slot since sort of October time, and what I find interesting is just nothing has changed in terms of the whole. I mean, in terms of the whole situation, I just find I find it quite amusing that the way it is being reported. I just don't see how he can possibly stay there. You know, you spent an absolute fortune last summer. This year, bar the Leicester, has been probably the worst title defence I can remember in recent times. It's been an absolute shambles. Started badly, picked up a little bit with some wins against mediocre teams, and just week in, week out, the players don't look engaged. I I don't know. It just looks. It feels like everyone's just waiting for him to go and then move on. Um, but maybe a new manager will come in and spend another 500 million, James.
What talk about like? So Slot, after the game, made an interesting comment, didn't he, about like Liverpool have to sell to buy. Well, let's just look who you sold in the summer, right? You got rid of Harvey Elliott because you didn't rate him, you didn't want to play him. Whatever's going on there with Villa, he's coming back. You got rid of Quansah, obviously treated him really badly at Ipswich, a young lad, hooked him up at half time in the first Premier League game last season. You got rid of him. You got rid of Tyler Morton because you didn't rate him at all. You also lost Trent Alexander-Arnold. You sold Ben Dirk because he's not good enough. So all these players you were never playing anyway. So all this business, oh, we have to sell to buy. You didn't want, this is honest, by the way, you didn't want a right back in the summer because you saw Conor Bradley was going to be your starting right back. Even so, he's not good enough. He's a completely different type of player to Trent Alexander-Arnold, and he's injury prone. He's injury prone. Yeah, he's got a serious knee injury at the moment, but he was always never played more than 20 games a season, and availability is absolutely key, as we all know. He sold a load of players, and he just couldn't. No, Diaz is a great sell. Don't care what he's doing for Bayern Munich. So Mickey Mouse League. He's 29, sold him for 65, 70 million pound. Darwin Núñez wasn't good enough for Liverpool Football Club. Got 45 million pound for him. It's fantastic business. And please, with Diego Jota, let him rest in peace. Let his family and his teammates grieve and his friends grieve for him. Do not bring up the excuse of his death and his passing as an excuse why Liverpool aren't playing well this season. It only happens when people bring it up because Liverpool lose. It doesn't happen when Liverpool win or things like that. Yes, it's extremely sad and whatever has happened, but let the family grieve, let the friends grieve. Don't bring that up as an excuse. It's not fair on them, it's not fair on the players, it's not fair on other fans. It's not a reason why Liverpool have been that bad this season. It's all on one person, and it's the manager or the head coach.
I think it's always interesting in sport, just the sort of narratives that get written. So what I'm seeing a little bit now with Slot is after Ekatiki's injury is oh, how unlucky Slot's been in terms of injuries. You know, he's had obviously issues at right back. You've had the Isak injury. You've had Ekatiki's injury now. Obviously the young centre back Leone or whatever injured. And people are almost attributing the lack of success this year to injuries now. And you look at it and go, well, yes, there's been some injuries there, but those injuries pale into insignificance to other teams. You can't be using injuries as an excuse when you've just spent so much money adding to a team that has just won the title. I mean, but what you see is you're seeing journalists making those excuses for Slot, and it's where I get particularly frustrated with the likes of Henry Winter. Some of the stuff he puts out, not necessarily about Slot, but it's all so narrative based and based on the agendas he has in particular around. We talk about it all the time about access to players, access to, one of my favourites was one last year. I think it was around relating to Amarin. Was it Amarim or was it? I think it was Amarim. And how what a great job he was doing, and all these sorts of things. And then next thing you know, he's obviously got a big interview with him, and it just gets pretty tiresome. These so-called journalists are so scared to actually talk about what is in front of us. They're willing to make all these excuses for them. It just seems crazy.
Absolutely. Anyway, let's move on to the other games. So the best game on that was Tuesday night, wasn't it? What was the other game on Tuesday night? Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, wasn't it? So, well, sixth game of the season, Barcelona obviously go 2-0. Yamal taking the absolute St. Michael again. And then they sat back and 2-1, Lippmann scored. And then another almost identical red card from what happened on the other night the first leg when Slorov went through and forgotten the guy's centre back name who plays. Eric Garcia got sent off this time. I think that's a little bit harsh. I actually do think that Conde was coming across to get across to him. It's pretty harsh to say to him he wasn't going to across and in that game of magnitude to send him off. I think it's hometown decisions per se, but Atletico Madrid held on. I mean, Araujo in the last minute had a great chance to equalise to make it, well, not equalise tomorrow, equalise on aggregate to make it 3-1 kind of thing. But Atletico Madrid goes through. I still feel the Barcelona will be a little bit annoyed about not going through there when they're 2-0 up and cruising in that game.
But what do you see, James? Discipline, right? You can't have a player sent off in both the legs, and it's one of the problems you have when you play a high line, is that if you get it wrong, there's a very high chance that you actually bring into play things like the red card for denial of goal scoring opportunity. That that's very much in play when you play that high line.
Haven't got the quickest centre backs in the world either, have they? So, yeah, missed opportunity for Barcelona there, I do feel. And then the best game of the week, obviously, was Real Madrid. Can we talk about your favourite goalkeeper? Well, Steve McManaman's best goalkeeper in the world, he claimed, Manuel Neuer. After a brilliant game in the Bernabeu, it's an absolute shocker. Absolute shocker.
Okay, so let me just talk about Neuer a little bit, right? Peak Neuer, like 10 years ago, was an unbelievable goalkeeper, right? And I don't think people realize or appreciate just how good he was, and all round like keeper as well. His shot stopping was unbelievable, and obviously renowned as a bit of a sweeper keeper. Just a brilliant, brilliant keeper. He hasn't been the same keeper. It's not just this year. He's been miles away from the keeper he was for 3 or 4 seasons now. He hasn't been close to those levels. And obviously, the first goal was obviously a terrible pass. By the way, brilliant finish. Um, a brilliant finish. And then obviously the free kick. I don't know what Neuer's doing there. He's had an absolute shocker. And the reality is, at this level, and we can talk about Courtois and him being missed. If Courtois had been playing for Real Madrid in that tie across the two legs, I think the outcome could have looked very, very different. You only have to look at the first goal Bayern scored. No idea what the keeper's doing. Allowing basically a free header a yard out. But goalkeepers are massively important, and there's no getting away from it. I think it's the most underrated position on the pitch, and we see time and time again these big games being decided by either brilliant goalkeeping or goalkeeping mistakes.
I think it's the most important position on the pitch. The drop off between the number one and the number two at 95% of clubs is absolutely astronomical. Obviously, because goalkeepers tend to get less injured in normally, really, and they don't get really rotated, do they, like other players kind of thing. So the drop-off's huge. Yeah, and Neuer's just absolutely past it. They've got to buy a new goalkeeper in the summer. But going back to like Bayern Munich, so Harry Kane obviously scored his 50th goal of the season. 50. It's just quite remarkable. And they've got Michael Olise is, we talked about Amri, fantastic player, really is good player. But both teams can't defend, and that's why I called about goals on Monday, because they've got two inexperienced head coaches, managers, and company in Arbeloa. Obviously, Arbeloa is going to get sacked at Real Madrid in the summer. It's just a stopgap. Be interesting to see who they appoint in the summer. That is a big decision. They need a manager there who can manage egos, because they have an awful lot of big name superstars who kind of need an ego manager. Someone like a Zidane, but I'd imagine Zidane wants a French job because they shot his even off to his World Cup. But I mean, they can't defend because companies been there 18 months and he's very inexperienced. Forget about his time at Burnley. It's a completely different job title and job, like Burnley or Bayern Munich kind of thing. So they both have to go out and attack. And they did. And it was a brilliant game to watch. But I don't understand company just allowing his fullbacks going flying forward all the time and just leaving gaps for Vinicius Jr., who is fast becoming one of my pet hates of the footballer. He's just so greedy and so overrated at the moment. It's almost since he didn't win the Ballon d'Or, because Rodri won it a couple of years ago, that he's just decided, I want to do everything myself now and don't want to be a team player. He's just an individual. And it proved on Wednesday night that he's just an individual, and really Real Madrid should be looking to move him on if they can do, and use that money to actually get some midfielders who can actually control the game. But it turned on Camavinga sending off, didn't it, really? And that referee at the end just, yeah, people call it stupid sending off. The referee had no idea that he'd already booked Camavinga a couple of minutes earlier. And because of the way he got told by the Munich players, you'd have booked him 3 minutes earlier. There's no way, if he hadn't booked Camavinga earlier, he's booking him there. If he knew he'd booked him or remembered, he's not booking Camavinga for picking up the ball away in that magnitude of a game. He just wouldn't do it. And it kind of ruined the game a bit, or the tie a bit.
So my thought on the sending off is this: I feel like they have I feel like the disciplinary system within football is so flawed and so broken. Are we really wanting a player sent off for, yes, you can call it time wasting, you know, but when you compare some of the other tackles and other things that happen in a game, so let's even just look back to last weekend with the Broby and the Romero and Kinski situation. On the one hand, that's not deemed to be a yellow card, where you've got a player who's now done his MCL. The other one had big gash to his head. No punishment for him. Genuinely dangerous play. And on the other, you have a player who's literally picked the ball up, jogging back, hasn't kicked the ball away, and has eventually put it down. So he's delayed the game maybe by, I don't know, 5 seconds or something like that. And yet we have all these other players who are wasting time continually throughout a game, who won't get punished. I just find so disproportionate that it makes almost no sense to me that football sort of hangs its hat on decisions like that. It just seems a nonsense. And in terms of Bayern's defenders, Upamecano, or however you want to pronounce him, is absolutely terrible. Must be one of the most overrated defenders in world football.
Absolutely, he's cooked on both points. Yeah, just nothing more to say on those two, really. Let's talk about the semi-finals quickly. So, obviously, you've got Arsenal and Atletico Madrid. I think Atletico Madrid will go through there. And PSG, I think their midfield is far too good for Bayern Munich's midfield. And I think their attacking players could make Munich's defence tar on me or Upamecano, who's playing there, mincemeat. They can absolutely destroy them. And on the bench, Luis Enrique is a far superior manager than the Vincent Company. I just think PSG will win that comfortably. I know Bayern Munich are very good going forward with Musiala coming off the bench again, Gnabry, Kane, Diaz, and Olise. But PSG's defence is decent. enough. I don't know how serious the Nuno Mendes injury was, but Lincoln Hernandez is a decent defender anyway. Just think they've
They
got
spent
too
they
much.
spent they spent like £50 million on Theo Hernandez or whatever it was back in the day.
Yeah, and so I just think that, and let's be honest with PSG, right? They should be good. I talked about it months ago. They're the only real club in Paris, and they've got Paris FC who are in Ligue 1 as well. But let's be honest, it's one club, one city, huge city. They've got all the money in the world from Qatar. They play in the Mickey Mouse leagues that all the French youngsters want to go to there, like Dure, Barcola, Dembele, Weiser, Emery. All these players want to go and play for Paris Saint-Germain, live in a great city, get paid fortunes. They should be at the top end of European football. There's no excuse why they shouldn't. It's all set up for them. Can you imagine one club in London, essentially? You have whoever it is, and then the other club is like a Charlton, essentially, is what Paris FC are, kind of thing. So it winds me up when they go, oh, Paris this, Paris that. It's one club in a major city in the world, capital city. It's just remarkable. One club.
Yeah, but I think one of the problems with Paris Saint-Germain is they have no real history. So they're not a big club in the sense of all the other heavyweights around Europe. So one player who did look injured was Doué. So it'd be interesting to see what the situation is with him. Obviously, Barcola came back. So they do have obviously some depth there, but you wouldn't want to lose both Mendes and Doué to injuries. Let's talk about more important competitions, James, like the Europa League. Villa put on a masterclass last night, won 4-0, very comfortable. I'll say this until I'm blue in the face, that it's amazing how much better Aston Villa look when they actually have some of their central midfielders back in the team. You know, honestly, I come back. We talk about narratives and the way people report on things. I'd love to go back over the last 3 months and view, all the sort of comments that have been talked about in terms of Villa's demise this year and the way they're struggling and all these sorts of things. Oh, they're falling off a cliff. XG's caught up with them, and all these, types of things. And it's from experienced journalists. And what a shock that when you're missing 3 or 4 of your best midfielders, your team turns into absolute garbage. And that's what was happening. And, since they've come back, they absolutely battered West Ham a couple of weeks ago. And that's a West Ham team who's getting results everywhere. They've obviously beaten Lille home and away. They've beaten Bologna home and away. They obviously drew with Forest last weekend, could easily have won that game. They were comfortably the better team. And, shock horror. They look a little bit better when their best players are playing.
Yeah, so great performance and an easy win against Bologna, kind of thing. That 3-1 last week, that last minute goal by Watkins last week is change your tie. I think you're always going through, but it just gives you a little bit of. It's a little bit of security kind of thing going at home, 2 goals at home rather than a 1 goal. Anything stupid could happen. Obviously, Martinez back fit was a huge as well, kind of thing. And yeah, Torres back fit, and your best player, maybe your best player, most important player, John McGinn again, brilliant again. He's just £2.2 million, ladies and gentlemen, from Hibs back in the day. Must go down as one of the best buys by any club anywhere in the Premier League.
You will not see a better piece of business than the transfer trio of Kamara, Tielemans, McGinn for £2.5 million. Our rest of our transfer business has been rubbish. Those 3, brilliant. Let's talk about Forest. I think Forest are pretty lucky to be in the semi-final, to be honest. They were poor in that first leg against Porto, really dodged a bullet to get away with it. And then last night, they were obviously missing Anderson after the sad news about his mum passing. And, they're the beneficiaries of that Bednarek red card very early on. And then you think, oh, this will be easy for Forest. But they were really poor for large parts of that. Obviously they've scored just after the red card. You're thinking 1-0 up, 75, 80 minutes to go in the game. Should be all over. Porto hit the bar twice, in that second half. And they could easily have ended up getting something from that. Forest, it just doesn't. They just don't look quite right. It's quite difficult to put your finger on exactly what it is, but I don't know. They're just something's not quite right with them.
Yeah, doing a European semi-final against Villa, aren't they? So yeah, it was. They just got through last night, didn't they? And the problem of last night for Forest, big takeaway was their injuries. Obviously, Chris Wood went off that bend tackle, or referee didn't even give a booking for that, by the way. And it was a clear red card. It was naughty. And hopefully, well, he saw the stud marks on Chris Wood anyway, so he had to go off. And he's 34 now. And he said in the week, didn't he, that he's going to have pain for the rest of his life in that knee. So God knows what he's done to the knee, what he did to it at the beginning of the season. But he'll be a big miss because everyone's talked about it, and we talked about it on Monday, having him back just a bit of a focal point to come back in, help them scoring. He's going to be injured for a while, it looks like now. Murillo went off injured. Hudson Doyle came on at half time. He went off injured as well in the second half. So had
And
three injuries.
both those injuries looked like they were sort of thigh injuries. So I mean, wait and see how serious they are. But Forest can't afford to lose their best centre back and one of their better sort of midfielders for 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, this is one of the things we talked about in terms of this competition. The rewards for are incredible for Forest, but this is such a distraction to what they're doing in the Premier League. And they've got this massive, massive game at the weekend against Burnley, and if they don't, they have to get 3 points in that game. And if they don't, because they've been playing in the Europa League and they end up going down, it will look terrible, terrible sort of planning from the club.
Yeah, and I did see a question like we kind of asked on Monday, like, would you take, to Forest fans, would you take a Europa League win and relegation, or staying up and go out the Europa League? And I think it was like about 60-40 in taking the Europa League win and getting relegated. I was like, really? I know you've been the champ.
Look, I can understand the idea of winning things and obviously get relegated. The problem I have for Forest if they get relegated is I think they almost do a Leicester and they'll do well. They won't just bounce back, I don't think. I think financially they have so many issues if they do get relegated that I'm not saying you'll see that it's the end of the club, but I think it's going to be way, way harder for Forest to come back up than say like a Tottenham. It will, for a Tottenham, because they're so on the cusp of financial issues already.
Even with the Champions League night.
Oh, I don't think it'll make all that much. I think one of the problems they have is Marinakis has based his ambitions and his spending on Forest being a comfortable mid-table team. And so if you suddenly losing all that money in terms of or the prize money even this year from finishing say 18th instead of say 10th or 11th, and yes, I think in terms of Europa League, I think next if you get through to the final, it's worth another 6 million, and then if you win it, it's worth another 7. So there's some decent money available for actually winning the Europa, relatively. But even if let's say they were played in the Champions League next year, are they going to be able to put out a team that's remotely competitive? They're not going to be picking up too many of the bonuses for winning games that you get and all that sort of stuff. So it feels like they'd get the bare minimum and they wouldn't make it into the last 16.
Right, wouldn't make it in the top 24 in my view. Just quickly looking at our fixtures for us. So they obviously play Burnley in a must-win game. We talk about must-wins all the time here, don't we? But that is a must-win for Forest. However that happens, they have to win. Get 3 points on Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock UK time. Then they go to Sunderland on a Friday night, the 24th of April, so a week tonight, 8 o'clock kickoff UK time, before they play you boys Villa in the Europa League first leg, and then they're away to Chelsea in between those, and then they're home to Newcastle afterwards. So they arguably have to pick up minimum 4 points next 2 games.
So we were having a chat before we came on air for this, and you said, "Oh, maybe they're going to rest players against Chelsea," and I'm like, I don't see how they can. They are firmly still in this. They've only got a 3 point cushion at the moment. Let's say they beat Burnley, which is not certain. 6 points. you can't just throw away games like Chelsea away. Chelsea, they could easily go to Chelsea and get a draw or something like that. That point may be the difference. And they've got a really difficult balance between getting the two right. And actually, I think Pereira did an okay job in terms of at least he rested some players in these last two games against Porto. But it's going to be a fascinating semi-final anyway.
Yeah, I do like watching two big clubs, historic clubs who have won the Champions League. That's not a dig at Arsenal, what it is. But anyway, and having two clubs from the same country against each other is good in the semi-finals for a neutral anyway. So yeah, looking forward to those two games. It'll be good atmosphere at both City Ground and at Villa Park in when is it? The 30th of April and a week later, isn't it? Back 30th and the 7th of May. Yeah.
Conference League, Palace, weren't incredible, but they ended up losing 2-1 on the night. Makes no difference. They're always going to go through. They obviously play Shakhtar Donetsk in the semi-final. I guess the one interesting one was Strasbourg overturned the deficit to make it through to the semi-finals. So obviously that's Chelsea's. Are we allowed to call them Chelsea's feeder club, or are they just part of the same ownership, James?
It's third 11, I think that's called.
So yeah, so that was the sort of European action from the week. So one thing we did see this week was in the Championship on Tuesday night, there were a couple of really interesting results. One was Southampton beat Blackburn 3-0. That in itself wasn't that interesting. It just cements Southampton's chances of playoffs and whether they could potentially, I don't know, sneak into second. Feels unlikely, but who knows? The bigger result was Ipswich, who were up there. They lost 2-0 to Portsmouth. So it really has put Leicester City are in a whole world of trouble in terms of trying to stay up. They're now 5 points behind West Brom with just 4 games to go. There is some chat about this West Brom points deduction potentially. Everything I'm seeing and reading about it is if they were to get a points deduction, it would only be minor. It wouldn't be like a 6 point. It might be a point or two. It may make a difference, but what we do have this week coming up is Leicester go to Portsmouth, who Portsmouth are 7 points ahead of them now after that win in midweek. So it looks like grim times for Leicester City fans.
Yeah, I think they're 5 on to get relegated now. So, and they've got a couple of really good kids as well, Leicester, through their academy. So, yeah, it's grim times, you say, for Leicester. They are financially in a world of trouble. And I think they said if anyone's taken, or that was Sheffield Wednesday actually, weren't they, saying if anyone's taken over, they've got points as well, kind of thing. So, two big clubs, historical clubs in the Championship, or no longer to be in Championship, have got massive issues.
Well, it sounds like Sheffield Wednesday are going to get a 15-point deduction for next season, which I just find it crazy. So the West Brom one is interesting because the more you read about it, it relates to, I think it was interest payments and where they sit within the business, and you might be talking about £1 million over or something like that, and we're talking about £1 million being worthy of point deductions. When you see some of when you see some of the other stuff that goes on, it just seems like what has football become, honestly? And I wouldn't mind if everyone was punished and everyone was treated in a very clear, fair way, then that's fine. But even just this week, the more you read about Chelsea and the structure within Clearwater and the whole look, the guys at Chelsea are very, very clever in terms of how they've set all the holding companies up and everything. But, for example, they don't put their interest payments through Chelsea. The holding company pays them. So one of the problems Man United have is that every year Man United are on the hook for the massive debt repayment interest to Glazer. But that comes out of Manchester United per se, rather than a holding company. So it's just very cleverly done by Chelsea. But I guess the point is more that they have, just through accounting and the way they account and do their accounts, they're doing stuff that's far worse than, say, West Brom are doing for the sake of £1 million. Just, I don't know. It just seems crazy.
One rule for smaller clubs, one rule for the larger clubs with the most money. It's seen it all the time, and they will continue doing it. Yeah, I mean, doesn't surprise me with Chelsea, but yeah, Chelsea news. Obviously, I see DC Casado signing a new contract. That's just
But no, but this comes back to what we've talked about before, which is that if you have a player who does well and is in demand, is he wants a new contract. He doesn't want, let's say he was on 150,000 a week, right? Suddenly he sees everyone else on massive money, particularly like Reece James, and he wants his 250,000 pounds a week. And this, the problem for Chelsea have with their model is that they still have to pay these. They end up having to pay these guys who do well anyway. It's not like they get these guys on for peanuts.
and it won't be Casado. It'll be Palmer won a huge new contract. João Pedro won a new contract. To keep Estavio, you have to pay him the going rate, 250 grand a week, which it is. I don't care what people say. When you're looking at other figures, especially in London, what you're paying the Arsenal lads, Chelsea lads are going to go, hang on, as you say, I want the 250, 300 grand a week. Thanks so much. That's what I can get elsewhere as well. So if you want me to stay, pay the going rate. And as you say, if they don't get Champions League football next season, they are in a whole world of trouble. Talking of contract, does it actually mean anything, really? Does it Casado contract actually mean anything? Because all it means is probably get a higher transfer fee. But if he wants to go and a club want him, he has no loyalty to Chelsea, I don't think.
No, he has no loyalty to Chelsea. And I think, honestly, if they don't make the Champions League, he'll be going, because there'll be lots of teams who want him.
There'll be a long queue, yeah. Just whether what you can get him for, I can't sell Chelsea want from. But yeah, anyway, that's Chelsea for you.
So just a couple of other things sort of in the news. Obviously, it looks like Bernardo Silva is definitely leaving Manchester City now. One interesting one was Harry Maguire misses this game, Chelsea Man United. It's quite nice to see the FA actually have some balls for once, and you know, players not leaving the pitch in a timely manner and arguing and all that sort of stuff. That players are actually penalised for it, and United will miss Maguire, given that Martinez is potentially suspended. I mean, let's see what happens in terms of the sending off he had for the hair pull, but potentially it leaves United a little bit short of centre back. One other thing that caught the eye was the Saudi PIF. So there's lots of stuff going on with Live Golf at the moment this week, but it looks like they've sold. So they're in 4 of the Saudi teams. It looks like they're selling Al Hilal. I would be a bit nervous as a Newcastle fan, I think, in terms of just how committed some of the Saudis are to that project at Newcastle. So I've touched on many, many months ago is, I know someone who works within Saudi circles, and he said they're always they're very good at promising the world, literally, in the early stages of projects, but they're very, very poor at actually following through and finishing these projects. Sometimes it's lack of money. So, sometimes it's because plans are just unrealistic. Money can't just buy you everything. And I think they're seeing that at Newcastle a little bit, is that it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can't just buy the Premier League title. So I wonder, what their appetite is to remain at Newcastle, particularly with Newcastle going to be facing some tricky times, I suspect, over the next 12 months.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, obviously, no Europe next season for Newcastle. Well, no Champions League anyway, but probably no Europe as well. So yeah, and if you're a Newcastle fan, you're looking at that Live in the last 48 hours, and the reports coming out, aren't they, that basically this is the last season of Live Golf kind of thing, because one, have run out of money, or essentially they've run out of money, or they've decided, as you say, the project's over, we can't be bothered continuing it. So sounds like, yeah, it's, you just don't know, do you? And the thing is, they probably thought when they bought Newcastle, as you said, they can spend as much money as they want. They have been able to do it in other sports, with boxing, with tennis, with Formula One, that they can spend all the money they want and they get everyone who they want. And they can't do that in football because of the rules and regulations. But maybe I'm surprised they actually just haven't just broken all the rules and just gone, sod it, we'll just break all the rules we can do. And then if we get fined, we get done when we're not there. Who cares, really? But maybe they obviously don't deal with it like that way. But yeah.
So, I mean, there is a lot. One player that has been a lot of talk about this week is Anthony Gordon. I know you being such a massive fan. I find it very pleasing to see. You know, he's obviously been linked with Arsenal. Now, I find it pleasing to see him linked with Liverpool as well. I mean, it sounds to me. So when you see these sorts of stories, is you have to try and work out what's happening in terms of agents and why these stories are coming out in the press. And I don't know whether it's a case of Newcastle realizing they may need to sell players this summer to meet the financial targets, or whether Gordon wants out. But it feels like a lot of noise from certain, relatively respected journalists, which would suggest that his future may lie elsewhere. I think one of the problems Newcastle have got is if Gordon goes, I think they're going to do incredibly well to keep Bruno and Tonali and Hall, for example. So, they may get good money for all of them, but they're going to be very difficult to replace.
Anthony Gordon's bang average. He's not a Liverpool standard player. He can get to Arsenal. He'll be fine at Arsenal. Develop as a left wing under Arteta. Yeah, Anthony Gordon won't be seen at Newcastle, I don't think, in the summer. So if you rewind 2 years ago, when they were under PSR issues, the story goes, and I think it's quite pretty true. They came to Liverpool and said, do you want Anthony Gordon? We want Joe Gomez for 40 million quid. You can have Gordon for 30 million quid, so £70 million transfer. And Liverpool went, well, yeah, absolutely. We'll take him for 30 million quid. Joe Gomez ain't going to play for us. We've got Virgil, we've got Ibrahim Konate, and we're getting £40 million for an injury-prone centre-back. Absolutely. Then Newcastle went, oh, actually, that's not a great deal for us. We'll sell Elliot Anderson and we'll sell Yakubu Minter for the money we need to survive PSR. And it was all going to be done that Gordon in about 2 or 3 days at the end of June 2024. Liverpool's never gone back in for Anthony Gordon at all. It's just media regurgitated talk that playing 2 + 2 = 5. He's a Liverpool fan, blah, 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 blah. He's a bang average footballer, and he's one hamstring tear away from being a championship footballer. If you take away one attribute of a player, like a proper attribute, whether it's his first touch, heading ability, or pace, you have to look at them, what are they like, kind of thing. What else could they do? You take away Anthony Gordon's pace, and what is he? Can he beat a man skillfully? Not really. Is he a great goal scorer? Certainly not. He went 13 months without a Premier League goal, by the way. And all his business, he scored early goals. Take away the penalties. He wouldn't take penalties at Liverpool. Wouldn't even be the top 3 or 4 penalty taker. And he is a good penalty taker, don't get me wrong. But he's not coming into a club like that taking penalties from the word go. What's he actually doing? He's 26, isn't he? 26, Anthony Gordon? And they're all talking about Rio and Gamora. Are you going to play Anthony Gordon ahead of Rio and Gamora all the time? This doesn't make any sense. It's just not happening. He is leaving. I think he will leave, but I don't think he'll come to Liverpool. I just don't rate the guy at all. I think he's bang average. I think relies a lot on pace and up against top class defenders. He's not good enough. He's just, no, thank you. Luke, you're on mute. Can't hear you there. But anyway, Luke's still on mute, so I'll continue. Can't hear Luke. Yeah, so anyway, that's Anthony Gordon. My views on Anthony Gordon. But yeah, we can't hear Luke at the moment. What else have we got to talk about? Oh yeah, sad news, obviously. Talk about Alex Meninga. Sadly passed away yesterday on Thursday in a car crash. I looked there. So just talking about Alex Meninga, sadly passed away. That's goalkeeper from Arsenal at Premier League. Fans will remember him. Yeah, 48. Very sad news with him. Austin yesterday. And he's a sort of Javi Mascherano got sent it's Miami over in the United States. So the team that's owned by Beckham and Messi, Luis Suarez and Jordi Alba play for. Nacho Busquets used to play for. Yeah, so those two other news. Yeah, in football.
No, all I was going to say, James, was I was just looking forward to seeing Gordon, Gakpo, and Gravenberch, in that Liverpool lineup for you next year. I know you'll be enthused.
Absolutely. I think Gakpo will actually have to stay now because obviously the Ekitike injury, he has to stay. Not hear Liverpool fans saying, "Oh, I should buy a replacement for Ekitike." You're not going to spending 60, 70 million pounds on a player to replace a player that's injured. It just happens in football. You just have to be clever. Liverpool got far more issues to
It,
worry about
I,
than replacing Hugo.
I always, I always find this time of year interesting as you see fans start looking at their summer transfer business, and so you end up seeing the most ludicrous potential ins and outs from various clubs. I sent you one this week where it was on social media, but a gentleman was implying that Liverpool should sell Curtis Jones for 50 million and then buy Casado for 50 million, amongst other transfers. Look, you know, I don't know. I don't quite know what people are thinking at times. But there'll be plenty of time to talk transfers. So some breaking news actually, James. I just caught a tweet from Ornstein, which was implying that Senesi from Bournemouth, he's a free agent this summer. It looks like he'll go to Tottenham if they retain their Premier League status. I find it all quite weird. So him and Robertson now have both effectively said they'll go to Tottenham on free transfers, effectively free transfers. If Tottenham stay up, just in terms of take Senesi for example. So everyone was talking about him being in high demand. I think he's very good with the ball at his feet. I question how good he is defensively. I think I quite like Hill who plays alongside him actually. But if you're Tottenham, well, no, sorry, if you're Senesi, it's what are the other clubs going to be thinking if you've turned other clubs down who might be interested? So let's say, I don't know, let's say Newcastle were interested in, I've got no idea if they are, but let's just use it as an example. So let's say Senesi had a choice between Tottenham and Newcastle and he chooses Tottenham, but only if they stay up. What are Newcastle going to think if, Tottenham get relegated? What does Senesi do then? Because Newcastle wouldn't be overly amused by the fact that he would have chosen Tottenham ahead of them.
Yeah, that's very odd. I mean, agreeing to go into a club, like Robertson, to a club that's favourites to get relegated from the Premier League. They are favourites, even money favourites to get relegated from the Premier League. And you're agreeing to go there. He said, like, if they get relegated, both Robertson and Sinetti are going to go, well, we're going to go next. And actually, as you say, going to go, well, hang on a minute, we're not paying you that sort of money because you didn't want to come here in the first place. So you can knock down a few million of your signing on fee and your wages as well. We can knock you down because you never want to come here in the first place. So why should we take you? Why should we pay you sort of money? And where does that leave Mickey van der Ven, by the way?
Well, it makes me think he's done. He must be done at Tottenham. But then, look, who knows? I think what's interesting as well is that clearly Langer is clearly still doing plenty of business at Tottenham in terms of looking ahead. So, given that his position should be almost untenable after the shambles of the last 12 months, is when you have someone putting deals in place like this, it makes you think that maybe his future isn't as uncertain as it should be. But I mean, we'll wait and see. I just don't see what the need is to even announce these types of things and leak it. I find it quite weird.
Yeah, and talking of Bournemouth, obviously the big news in the week was Europa has decided to leave Bournemouth. I saw some report. So this is Ornstein. This is my another thing I said to you offline with Ornstein and all these other journalists. Yeah, they have got very good sorting, very good connections. Ornstein straight away comes on and says that Kieran McKenna, the Ipswich manager, was the #1 choice in that article when he said O'Reilly was leaving, right? Well, that's not true because he's rejected or he's not even been in discussion. Marco Reuser, RFC, the German lad, he's going to be appointed to Bournemouth manager. So yeah, while they do have good connections and sources, they're not always right, and they're not always told what they're always told what to say. Could easily be putting up, not like in the Senesi incident, but in other instances, they do get told what to write to put fans, media off what actually is going on behind the scenes to stop the noise and they appoint someone else from out of the blue kind of thing. But yeah, Senesi's an interesting one. As a free, I think you probably would take him. He's a good squad player. Let's be honest, he is an international for Argentina, and he's been proved in the Premier League. He does have mistakes in him, but as a freebie, you would take him. But I just don't understand what they're announcing now that he's going to go to Tottenham when they're in the relegation, and the last thing they need. And also, will De Zerbi be there next in come August if they're relegated?
I don't know. But all I'd say in terms of the Ornsteins of the world, it's an absolute cesspit of lies, misinformation, um, and just absolute nonsense for 99% of it. Ornstein is one of the few who I would give any credibility to. Um, he obviously doesn't get everything right. I remember when he told us that Naipan was signing for Villa and he ended up signing for Manchester City. Things do change. I would say that. So it's not always as black and white as you might think. Right, let's talk this weekend's Premier League games just quickly. Um, Only one game really to start with. We have to talk about is Manchester City Arsenal. Everyone just seems to assume that Manchester City are going to win this game, and if they do win this game, it will absolutely heap the pressure on Arteta and Arsenal. It'll put City 3 points behind with a game in hand. Any advantages and goal difference will be pretty much wiped out, and it will be massive pressure on Arsenal. I can't see Arsenal do anything but go up there and be super negative, almost try and play for a draw.
Yeah, Arsenal playing 5 centre-backs, 5 midfielders, Jokeris won't start. Norgard might play. They actually might play Ben White, Masquera, Hincapi, Calafiore, Saliba, Gabriel. They might try and even get 2 goalkeepers in the team. They won't go past the halfway line, Arsenal. Forget about it, Arsenal fans. You're sitting there for 95 minutes of desperately praying for a 0-0 draw. He is going there ultra defensive. There's no way that Arteta can do anything different anyway, not in his mindset. I think City are going to come out and try and blast them. I think City are going to try and get on the front foot immediately, and they're going to have 75% of the ball, and Arsenal are going to sit on that penalty line, on the penalty area side, and go try and break us down. And City, crowd behind them as well, 4:30. They know the pressure's on Arsenal. It's the biggest game in the Premier League season by an absolute mile. And City are going to literally try and just overall Arsenal, try and get some goals ahead and see what they can do. They're not going to be worried about Arsenal, the counter attack, because Kirchhoff is pace as well. As long as he doesn't do anything stupid. I see they've got the referee they want as well. They've got Mank Anthony Taylor as well, the player, the referee, sorry, that lives in Manchester as a referee. How is that still allowed? I mean, it's just nonsense, but he is a referee. He is probably the best referee in the Premier League, but that's not hard kind of thing when you got Michael Ivo, who still thinks he's a good referee. So, yeah, it's a game I'm looking forward to. Actually, really good sport on Sunday, actually. You obviously got the Merseyside derby, yeah, but Saliba hasn't had a great season, hasn't had a great last 3 or 4 months as well. And Haaland bullied him as well. And as I talked about earlier, Declan Rice is just not fully fit. So, Bernardo's last game as well. Last
I,
game against Arsenal at home.
I
Just
guess one of the big things is that Arsenal have obviously played in midweek, so City won't be used to having the advantage of actually having not just come off a midweek game. It's normally them who are always at the disadvantage. So they will have actually had a week to plan for this as well and prepare for it properly. And it will be interesting to see what Pep comes up with. I mean, there were some subtle differences Pep made in that Carling Cup final, Carabao Cup final. ahead of, rather than the game they played at the Emirates earlier in the year, where City were super negative. So I am intrigued. It's just going to be a fun game to watch, and you know, it does feel like the title really does depend on this game. If City win, are Arsenal mentally strong enough to come back and get, it's going to be interesting to see. And if obviously Arsenal do get a draw, it's I think mentally it would give them such a big boost that it would see them home.
Yeah, one thing I haven't seen any team use is Nick O'Reilly, because I think he would be a big loss for City if he's not available.
I
Honestly, I do.
looking at the injury he had last week, I would be surprised if he's available. You don't come back from hamstring 6 days later. Unless it's cramp. It didn't look like cramp. I mean, all I would say is they do have very competent players who can play there, like Ait Nori would play there instead. So it's not like, yes, they will miss him, but it's also not quite the end of the world.
Not sure, but it is a big blow. He has been playing well. He also carries a goal threat as well, Nick O'Reilly. Yeah, I think if City win, I think they win the title. I think it's. I don't think Arsenal to recover from that. I know Man City obviously play in the week, so it could be level in points in the week. They've got a midweek game, haven't they, away at Burnley as well. I think they're playing on Wednesday night away against Burnley, which is 3 points as well. So if they win, they're at level essentially. And you talked about it, the mentality of Arsenal, not letting slip a 9 point 9 points. They were ahead. I know they had to play the game more, but it was 9 points now. It's level. City have been there, done it. Arsenal got Champions League as well. I don't think there's any way back for Arsenal. I really don't. I think if they get a draw, I think it's their title. But if City win, then I think it's City will win the title.
In terms of obviously the other games, let's just go back to Saturday. The one that sort of catches the eye a little bit is Newcastle Bournemouth. Not so much from anything the teams actually have anything to play from. I think Newcastle look pretty short at the current 2.06 against this Bournemouth team. I think they actually Bournemouth set up really well to play Newcastle, and I think that's potentially quite interesting. Obviously, the big game is Tottenham against Brighton, De Zerbi. Brighton have been playing pretty well in recent weeks, getting a lot of results, not always blowing teams away, but I don't quite know how De Zerbi even begins to approach that type of game in terms of, against Brighton, you want to sit as deep as you can, just generally. You don't want to press Brighton. Brighton will tear you to pieces if you try and match up with them in terms of be aggressive against them. So, can De Zerbi at home? I mean, this is where it's always fascinating to me. He's new manager, first home game. Can he really sit there and be a little bit negative in terms of how he approaches that game?
Yeah, it's a tricky game set up for De Zerbi, isn't it? Because Brighton, as you say, are in really good form, carry a goal threat as well. And Tottenham are all over. Romero's obviously missing. I don't know the news about Vicario if we record this. Is he back or Kinski? I thought actually Kinski had a half decent game against Sunderland. He made a couple of big saves as well. And fair play for him to come back after the humiliation in Madrid under Tudor. So give some credit to Kinski there. But yeah, that's a massive game for Tottenham. They can't afford to lose that because they obviously play Wolves as well. And then the last four fixtures are pretty tough for Tottenham. And if they lose that, especially they're playing Leeds are playing Wolves early in the day as well. Leeds, if they had a huge win on Monday night against Man United, where they should have been 4-0 up at half time. Very impressive performance by Leeds on Monday night. Let's get out there. And then, yeah, as you say, the Newcastle Bournemouth game. I mean, Bournemouth won 4-1 there last year, didn't they? I know it's slightly different Bournemouth side and Newcastle side, but Newcastle are all over the place. You have no idea what Newcastle's best 11 is yet. Still haven't done it. They made 6 changes against Palace. They'll probably make another 6 more tomorrow. Fancy Bournemouth there. And then Chelsea versus Man United. I mean, crumbs. United, what we know they are, bang average. Carrick's almost been found out. Please give him a job full time. Be absolutely fantastic for the rest of the Premier League. Way out of the depths there. Who knew? I mean, strange decision not to play Brian and Remo and play Shesko up front and play Amad Diallo on the right hand side. Brian and Remo has been one of your best players, if not second best player behind Bruno Fernandes this season, and you don't start him. It's just a weird selection. And they played as 4-2-3-1, but they've got absolutely no pace in that side whatsoever. It's just teams will work that out. Chelsea just don't know Enzo Fernandez is back available. Sounds like he's going to go straight back in the team. It's a must win for, I think, for Chelsea kind of thing, because Rosini is under huge pressure there at Chelsea. Just the way he manages the team off the field as well. And yeah, it's actually 3 really good games on Saturday afternoon from the Newcastle Bournemouth. Tottenham Brighton will be a fun game to watch, and Chelsea Man United, just the pressure on both teams there.
And I think the Leeds one is interesting in terms of, when you look at the fixture list, you got a home game against a team who are bottom. A Leeds win there, and as you say, following on from the United win, they would be almost safe. Well, not, given they've also got other reasonable fixtures. I think Chelsea Man United is difficult because I don't quite know. There's certain games you have a feel for as to how you think they might go. So let's, like Newcastle Bournemouth or Tottenham Brighton. Chelsea Man United, I don't know. I feel like a bit of a loss as to exactly how both teams will approach it. All I would say is United look better when they can play against teams on the counter attack, and they can actually use their pace, to try and get in behind Chelsea. I don't think, we touched on Carrick for a long time now in terms of, the idea of him being the next Man United boss just seems comical. And yet some people are still entertaining it, but I guess that's the football world we live in. And then as you go on to Sunday, again, some really, really important games. So Forest Burnley, wow, that game is so big for Forest. If they don't, they've had a couple of these already this season, and they had the one against Wolves that saw was the final game that saw Dyche leave, was when they drew 0-0 with Wolves, and they battered them and just couldn't score. And I just worry for Forest that, Burnley aren't great. Burnley will sit deep and make it life difficult for Forest, and just whether Forest got enough quality to actually take the chances and score. What is interesting with Forest is Pereira has a really poor record at home in the Premier League. So it's like 8 Premier League games at home, and they haven't won yet under him, which partly explains some of their troubles. But it just feels a huge game for Forest. Any thoughts on that one?
In the politics, Forest have to win. Doesn't matter how. Just they need to get over the line. Their injuries, the Wood injury worries me a lot, and the Murillo injury. They just need to get over the line. Doesn't matter how. Just have to for them to stay in the Premier League. They need to win that. That's just a 3 points massive for them. Aston Villa, Sunderland. I think it'll be interesting to see what. I think you'll play the same 11 kind of thing again, don't you think? Just roll them out again. You had a relatively easy second half yesterday. Didn't do much running, I imagine.
Yeah, look, if we want to finish top 5 or whatever, we need to be winning these sorts of games.
Yeah.
Sunderland obviously never easy. I just remember that stalemate we had against them earlier in the season where they had Reinildo sent off. And we just couldn't break them down. So my worry against Sunderland is, they do sit back, and Villa do struggle at times against teams who just sit deep to break them down. But I feel like playing with a little bit more confidence again now, and hopefully have enough to get past them. And then we have Everton winning Merseyside derby later in the afternoon, James.
Yeah, 2 o'clock, the first game at the Hill Dickinson Stadium. Actually, delighted Liverpool fan not having to go to Goodison, because going to Goodison was a nightmare at times. Even though they had a great record recently, or not recently, but over the last 15 years, they had a decent record there. Just one note on Everton Football Club. We must applaud them in their continued support of the Hillsborough and the Hillsborough Law. They unveiled a plaque at the new stadium on Wednesday, 15th April, to 37th year anniversary. They had a plaque of the 97 just a memorial. It's a lovely touch. They've always supported Liverpool Football Club. They obviously had some family members and friends who they lost 37 years ago on 15th April. Yeah, so fair play to Everton Football Club and that. Yeah, they'll be fancying their chances big time on Sunday afternoon. And why not? I mean, God knows what Liverpool are going to do on Sunday afternoon. The first thing you need to do in a Merseyside derby, in any derby or any game of football, is actually match the work rate. And you know that Moyes will set up that team, and you have to match that work rate. And if you don't do it, you're going to get rolled over. So yeah, it's whether the players can actually get themselves up, and if they can't get themselves up for a Merseyside derby in a game that they kind of can't afford to lose, then they shouldn't actually be representing the shirt anyway. I'm very fearful. I wouldn't be taking into the current prices on Liverpool at 2.4. Thanks so much. An away game, and I know Everton have got a poor home record this season, but they've had the week off as well. They've got some good players, Everton, let's be honest. They've got Ndai up against, I don't know who'll play right back for Liverpool because Joe Gomez is injured again. Frimpong looks what he is, just not a right back and looks lost in the Premier League, kind of too small. Yeah, he's quick, but he's just too small, not physical enough. He's not a right back. God knows what. It's an opportunity buy to play and buy him. But yeah, so probably Sabod's like right back fun. So weeding out Gravenberg and McAllister again, no doubt. That go up front. Mo Salah on the right, that obviously Slot doesn't trust.
Oh, Jane, you love it, really.
Yeah, it's one of those games. I mean, yeah, it is actually a good set of Premier League fixtures this weekend, to be fair to them.
It does vary wildly, and then obviously Monday night one is. I'm not going to say it's as important as any, but there are potentially huge consequences to the Palace West Ham game. You know, Palace potentially on the beach a little bit, having just been beaten Fiorentina, and Palace picked up some key injuries in that game. So it looks like Wharton, Mateta, Lacroix, so they could all potentially be missing this particular game. West Ham are obviously absolutely buzzing at the moment. You do just wonder if it's a good time for West Ham to be playing them.
It is, I think, for West Ham. They've got goals on the side. I just think West Palace on the beach. They can't do anything in the Premier League. They're all in on the Conference League. The players will subconsciously won't be running as much as they can do. And those two big injuries. That's the one thing I worry about Wharton, by the way, is he does pick up a lot of niggling little injuries and a lot of bookings. Now, he's a fantastic footballer, don't get me wrong, but he can be slightly injury prone kind of thing. He does pick up a lot of niggles. So, one to look out for. He'd be leaving in the summer anyway as well.
Any other thoughts on the week's games?
One other game, there's the Copa del Rey final tomorrow night, Saturday, 8 p.m. is Atletico Madrid versus Real Sociedad. So there's no La Liga games, although that league's over. Obviously, Barcelona have won the league. They're 9 points clear, and they could win the title at home to Madrid in a couple of weeks. El Clasico to the Camp Nou. So yeah, so just a couple of other sporting news. The Snooker World Championship starts tomorrow, 10 o'clock UK time. It's on for 2.5 weeks. The world number one and reigning champion Zhao Xintong is the favourite, quite rightly favourite. He's in great form. Last week he just sunk Higgins and Trump in semi-finals and finals, respectively 10-1 and 10-2, 10-3. There's 11 Chinese players in the 32, a record up from last year. Looking at the betting there, I just can't see him not winning it. I mean, Judd Trump's got an awful record, really. Robertson can't do anything there. Matthew Stevens is back in it, qualified. Fair play to him, considering how good he was back in the day, 20, 30 years ago. He qualified. Luca Burrell, the 2023 champion, he didn't qualify. So yeah, so Snooker World Championship's on. Always good fun to watch that for 2.5 weeks. Just some news about other sports news. Ben Stokes did an in-house interview with the ECB, nauseating stuff. But he did come out with something about how close he was having a bit of issue with his eye. But yeah, you got the cricket, the IPL continues. That young Indian lad, the 15-year-old lad, just unbelievable talent. It really is. I mean, talk about kids coming through, the superstars. He looks outrageously good. Yeah, obviously, you've got live golf going on at the moment. All of that news you talked about it briefly. Yeah, so another look throughout the sport. And then for the Irish listeners, hurling's back playing. So the hurling is back on this week. Listening to that this morning. It's a big game for the hurling this week. Yeah, so plenty to keep our eyes on and ears to the ground with.
Brilliant. Well, let's wrap it up then, and we'll catch up on Monday. Let's hope. I don't know. I don't know what I want to happen this weekend, James.
Well, it goes back to that question, doesn't it? On Monday, we asked Arsenal to boss the title or Spurs to get relegated. We could ask it again on Monday, couldn't we? I mean, it's just a massive. All these games now, there's only, what, 6 games left. They're all the magnitude of these games, especially how the league is at the top and at the bottom. I know it's only.
I mean, the crazy thing is, right, on Monday, we could be in a situation where Arsenal could have beaten Man City and the title be pretty much over. We could have a situation where Arsenal are in a whole world of trouble. And, City will be not big odds on, but they'll be odds on, significant odds on to win the title. You have a situation with Tottenham where if Tottenham win and West Ham don't, for example, so obviously not on, so West Ham won't play when we do the next one. We have a whole series of scenarios where, let's say, Tottenham lose at home to Brighton, and Leeds win their game, and Forest obviously get a result in their game, where Tottenham are staring into the abyss, and we're pretty short price to go to stay up. So I mean, every weekend at the moment feels massive.
The pressure's up, and pressure does funny things. It really does. You just don't know how people are going to react. Obviously, yeah, it's just it'll be a fun weekend to watch. It really will be. Anyway, enjoy yourselves, have fun, take care, and we'll speak to you all on Monday. Cheers. Thanks.